Crypto chaos is set to kick off today, and not only because of this Fed Chair Powell speech today at the Jackson Hole conference, but also the worst month for Bitcoin and crypto is incoming. So we need to take a deep dive in towards the seasonality, because this is going to be critical to survive the next phase in the market. But we will discuss a lot more than only that. We'll take a dive in towards all the latest news hitting the market, the most important Bitcoin data points, and we will also take a deep dive in towards Ethereum and somewhat of altcoins. So from there, guys, make sure to first of all subscribe to the channel and watch and like my latest YouTube videos, and then we can dive in towards the most important content. Since we have crypto chaos ahead, today Fed Chair Powell is going to give a Jackson Hole speech, and that speech is going to be critical to see where those target rate probabilities for September are moving. Are we going to see a rate cut in September, or isn't this going to be the case? The rate cut probabilities have come down from 99% way to 73% now, and that is why this exact speech is going to be hugely important, because is Powell going to take a dovish or a hawkish stand? That is going to be the most important question. And if we take a look into what happened after the Jackson Hole speeches in 2023 and also 2024, it was always followed by a period of usually weakness and definitely a lot of volatility. It doesn't take away the fact that we could see a positive reaction if Powell is going to be dovish, but on the other hand, this Bitcoin seasonality is still likely to play out, and that is why this is going to be such an interesting phase in the market, because we have so many external factors out there. And I do think, because let's discuss the most important chart of this video, and that is this chart over here, where Bitcoin is basically trading above this major support line and above the bull market support band. What tends to be happening this bull market is exactly at that September period we see a retest of this support line, and I do think this is going to be likely to happen again for Bitcoin. Why? If you take a look into the Bitcoin monthly returns, we can see that usually September in general isn't a great month for Bitcoin, and definitely also not in post-halving years. Look at 2021, minus 7% here, and also in 2017, minus 7%. So probably we're going to see a somewhat of a similar return in September once again. And this isn't just like August, for example, where we did saw that yes, August might be a negative month for Bitcoin in general, but in post-halving years, it's actually a quite bullish month. And that is now not the case. So I do think that Bitcoin could be closing August in the green still. So a little bit of a push to the top side for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and closing it in the green. And then September could turn in a red month. I do think that is going to be an unlikely scenario. But yeah, we all do know that the next market move is going to be highly dependent on the stance Powell is going to take. It could also be the case that Powell is just going to say, I'm not going to comment on the economic outlook, but usually he tends to do so at those Jackson Hole speeches. So that's why I do think it's going to be such an important speech today, and let's see how that is going to play out. This is going to be what you need to be watching, those rate cut probabilities. If those are coming down by a lot, I'm definitely expecting quite a negative reaction. If we are going to move a little bit higher, we could definitely see a positive reaction for Bitcoin, and definitely for Ethereum, because Ethereum is actually setting up quite nicely now, but that is something we will talk about later in this update video. And just to prove my point about the Bitcoin September seasonality, like we stated in this exact chart over here, we also do have these data points which clearly show that the Bitcoin seasonality on average is quite negative. It's the most negative month for Bitcoin basically, and also after those Bitcoin halvings, post-halving years basically, we can see that usually in September we see a slight pullback before eventually a big move higher. So you can see it as something negative, but ultimately it's also going to be be a huge opportunity. Of course, we will be discussing this a lot more on the channel in the upcoming videos, so just make sure to don't miss out on any videos. And then also we have Bitcoin versus the global liquidity here. This is a chart we have been talking about a lot on the channel basically. The global liquidity isn't looking too good in my opinion, because we are still trading at a downtrend and seems like we are seeing another rejection here. So, but on the other hand, we still do have this massive potential Bitcoin move in the tank, because I do think Bitcoin is going to catch up with the global liquidity still, and that does correlate with the chart I'm showing you here, because I do think, for example, Bitcoin does grab the liquidity in that September period and then initiates that final wave to the top side. And that's also going to be the same way as Bitcoin basically following the global liquidity in this period. And then you could be looking in a Bitcoin price target of between 140 and 150,000 US dollars. We could be topping out a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but I do think there's still one final Bitcoin move in the tank, because yeah, that's basically what the data is clearly showing us here. And I do think in that final Bitcoin wave there are going to be a lot of opportunities in the market, also for altcoins definitely. So if you do want to be grabbing those opportunities, make sure to join our public Telegram group. I've linked this group in the description on this YouTube videos. Make sure to join that public group or that VIP group. The difference is that in the public group we share a few altcoin setups a day, or Bitcoin, it depends a little bit. And in the VIP group we basically have a lot more setups from 5 professional traders, and also from Crypto over here. Also shared a update today in the public Telegram about this upcoming liquidity grabs for the market. So I do think both channels are definitely going to be valuable. Just pick one and I will see you there. And then let's discuss some Ethereum. We have been discussing this chart a lot, so I don't want to repeat myself every single time, but we are still trading above the reaccumulation phase. We have seen a nice retest exactly on that 4,100 US dollar level, and I do think from there Ethereum is actually setting up quite nicely for another move higher, but I do think most of it is just going to depend on Powell and the Fed in the upcoming period, and of course the seasonality. So yeah, I'm not quite sure if this Ethereum move is going to continue to the top side, but on the other hand it is setting up quite nicely. So let's see about exactly that. Currently still some liquidity under Ethereum, and there's still some liquidity above Ethereum, and this is quite a big level actually. So most of the liquidity is currently stacking off just above that Ethereum price action here, which is actually looking quite interesting. Also the ETH seasonality isn't looking all too good in September. Big negative returns in 2017 and also in 2021. So just keep that in mind. I do think history is going to be likely to repeat. So probably this August we could see another move to the top side for Ethereum and Bitcoin. And definitely at the beginning of September, me personally, I do think we could see a move to the downside. Maybe starting a little bit earlier, maybe starting a little bit later. But yeah, that's honestly just what I'm thinking of the markets currently. And then for altcoins we also do have this quite interesting chart, which is the total tree versus ETH basically. And that is now showing on the RSI that we are quite oversold at the current levels. So the last time we were this oversold basically was in 2021. And that was also the turning point for altcoins versus Ethereum. So it seems like we are actually getting quite close. But I do think eventually the most positive price action for altcoins is going to occur in Q4. So that's going to be important to understand. I've also overlaid this chart, so basically the white chart is total tree versus ETH, pink/purple line is the total tree market cap, and we can see that that tends to start moving exactly after that bottoming of altcoins versus Ethereum. That is going to be the most parabolic phase in the market for altcoins. So if history is going to repeat for this altcoin season also, which I do think is going to happen once again, then we could be in for a massive altcoin season, and also that bottom is getting quite close. And guys, that was it for today's update video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's update video, and I will see you guys within the next update video tomorrow.